Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today. My name is Scott Ma. I'm the director here at Homelife Landmark. I think most of you are our Landmark agents. There may be some of you joining from outside. So thanks again. Today we're going to talk about Fintrac. There's a couple of new updates, and then we're also going to go through the Fintrac forms, the required forms that you've probably all seen, and we'll provide some guidance and tips on how to fill out those forms. And then I have another kind of update on MLS, recent rules and updates. Can everyone hear me? Okay. If you can't hear me, you might have to enable the audio on your Zoom. Um, Especially if you're on the phone joining Zoom, you might have to join the audio. Um, so let's get started. Here's just a brief agenda. So Fintrac overview, recent bulletins and updates, and then completing the ID and the receipt of fund forms. And then I mentioned earlier, I'm gonna go through some of the more recent MLS updates. You may know about the Data Integrity Service, DIS. So we get a lot of DIS notices recently. So I'll talk about those and best practices for your listings, how to avoid DIS notices in the future. So moving ahead, Fintrac. Hopefully everyone knows what Fintrac is. If you don't, this is a very helpful slide here. Fintrac is the Financial Transactions and Reports Analysis Center of Canada. So they're responsible for Canada's anti-money laundering and anti-terrorist financing regulations. And their purpose is to ensure all businesses comply with the Proceeds of Crime, Money Laundering, and Terrorist Financing Act. So this act was enacted many, many years ago to combat kind of the, international flow of funds and activities that support, those kinds of money laundering or terrorist financing activities. So really the goal for us as real estate agents is we are an important factor, part of Fintrac. Our role is to ensure that we maintain adequate records and report any suspicious transactions. And I'll go into those details shortly. So yeah, so like it says here, right? Home Life Landmark agents and brokers are required to comply with FinTrack legislation whenever we are involved in a real estate purchase or sale transaction. So you can note here that leases are not included in the Fintrac regulations. So obviously, if you're helping a tenant or a landlord do a lease transaction, you don't have to fill out the Fintrac forms. But whenever you're acting for a buyer or a seller, and that applies to both residential and commercial, you have to fill out the Fintrac forms. So when you're receiving or paying funds, depositing or withdrawing funds, or transferring funds by any means. Um, the penalties for non-compliance are very hefty. This can include fines, criminal charges, and jail terms. So you see here, failure to report a suspicious transaction that can lead to 5 years of jail time and or fines of up to 2 million. Failure to report a large cash transaction, again, heavy fines. Cash transactions, our brokerage as a policy, we do not accept any cash for any transaction. So I don't think you will typically encounter cash for a real estate transaction. If someone has a briefcase full of cash, maybe they won the lottery recently. You know, it's probably more of a something to deal with their lawyer. But as agents, we never accept any cash from clients. Everything we do is by checks or bank drafts. And lastly, failure to retain records. Um, Non-compliance can lead to fines up to $500,000 or 5 years imprisonment. So, everything here sounds like very harsh penalties. And I can tell you, there's been recent cases where you'll see right here, the fines are very significant. So I put here a couple of news releases from Fintrac on fines they have levied on different organizations. So you can see here, um, Exchange Bank of Canada, a few months ago, they were given a penalty of almost $2.5 million for non-compliance, and that included, not submitting suspicious transaction reports, not completing the receipt of funds records, and not conducting ongoing monitoring of business relationships. The term business relationship is a defined term under the FinTrack regulation, and I will explain that in a bit. You can see here, TD Bank and RBC, they've both been given very severe penalties for non-compliance, and I think part of the reason is obviously they are one of the big five banks in Canada, and so they're responsible for a lot of financial transactions and activities, and so when you don't keep the adequate records or you don't maintain, appropriate safeguards in place, that's when FinTrack comes in and will give pretty significant fines. Another good example here is Jones Lang LaSalle, JLL. They're more active in the commercial real estate space, but you can see even JLL, they got a penalty of over $100,000 in March of last year for non-compliance, and that included not keeping receipt of funds records. So that includes account number, account type, birth date, and occupation, and also not keeping adequate ID records. So, the type of ID document, the document number, and the issuing jurisdiction and the expiry date. So, when we go through the forms, I think some agents will complain, well, why is there another form we have to complete? Why is there so many required documentation, required details? And there's a reason for that. And you can see here, like, the penalties are pretty severe. So there's reasons to everything that we do. Our brokerage, we get audited by Fintrac every couple of years. And so that's why when you submit a transaction to our deals department, deals will ask you for any outstanding information. And as a policy, we want to make sure all of our paperwork is, dots are dotted, I's are dotted, and T's are crossed. We want to make sure everything is complete because after you finish a transaction, maybe many, many months or even years, it's very hard to remember what happened way back when. So, as a policy and as far as our procedures are concerned, we want to make sure all the agents submit their paperwork on time and everything's complete. And then anything that's outstanding, we will definitely, ask you to provide. In terms of our brokerage FinTrack compliance regime, this is required by Fintrac, so we have a compliance officer appointed to oversee our brokerage Fintrac policies, and that's me. We have a Fintrac compliance manual that has all of our policies and procedures. And then we have Fintrac training seminar, like the one you are currently attending, by our brokerage managers. And there's always Fintrac resources from Treb, Rico, Korea. And then there's also ongoing risk assessment. So as a brokerage, and I think also as agents, we always have to maintain ongoing records and a documentation of, your clients and any risks that you may encounter as part of the FinTrack compliance. This just shows you where you can easily access our FinTrack resources. So on the agent portal, under Office Resources, and then if you go to Office Guides and Policies, you'll see we have a separate tab for FinTrack compliance. So we have our FinTrack compliance manual here. We have a link to our FinTrack training videos and a couple of other, FinTrack documents that it's always good to have on hand. We also have sample Fintrac ID forms and receipt of funds records. So anytime you're trying to complete the form and you don't know how to do something, you can consult this form first. But always definitely, ask your managers, on duty managers, or myself. Anytime you have questions about Fintrac, it's always better to ask first than to not ask, and then you have to come up with the missing information later. There's a couple of developments recently from Fintrac. So there was a notice issued this morning. I included it here. Basically, Fintrac and RCMP have issued an advisory, which basically prohibits all Canadians and businesses from employing any IT workers that are from North Korea. So many of you will say, well, I've never met a North Korean. I don't know anyone who's from North Korea. But the point is, these IT workers, they will often pose as legitimate freelancers, based in certain other countries, right? They're not going to tell you that they're from North Korea, but they may pretend to be, a freelancer from the US or a freelancer from Canada. And then they may offer, general IT support or IT services, graphic animation, or, even online like platform development. So that includes someone offering to design your website or someone offering, general IT support and services. Um, I think as agents, you just have to be on the lookout for anyone offering these services, especially if someone is contacting you out of the blue, you have no prior relationship with them. You do need to consider the situation, do some digging on who this person is, because these people are getting very um, clever and savvy. They use VPN, which is virtual private network, so you cannot trace them by IP, or they may use AI technologies to hide their real identities. And through those kind of methods, they can get your personal or corporate information. So we always want to be on the lookout for these kinds of characters. And related to this are they're called ministerial directives. So these are issued by the Minister of Finance and under Fintrac, and they basically require reporting entities, which include real estate agents, to apply countermeasures to any transactions coming from or going to um, designated countries. So as of right now, there's a ministerial directive applicable to Russia, Islamic Republic of Iran, and so North Korea, DPRK. These three countries, if you have any real estate transaction involving, clients from those countries, you definitely have to be, engage in more due diligence of the client and keep more records than you would normally do. Um, right? If they're not Canadian citizens, um, if their identification shows they're from those countries, you definitely have to treat them as high risk. And it says here, regardless of the amount, every transaction from or going to those countries must be treated as high risk, and a record of this transaction must be kept on file. Um, as real estate agents, we also have to verify the identity of any person or company or entity requesting or benefiting from this transaction. So all that is to say, anytime you're involved in a real estate deal, involving either a person or a company from Russia, Iran, or North Korea, you have to be very careful, engage in, more due diligence, treat them as high risk. And I think always like talk to our managers, talk to us first, because you don't want to get yourself um, on the wrong side of Fintrac. And then there's also a list of countries that are under increased monitoring as of June 2025. So these are countries that basically they don't have a proper Fintrac regime. So either they don't care, or they haven't updated their Fintrac compliance regime. to comply with the sort kind of the global standard. So Algeria, Angola, Bolivia, Bulgaria. I won't name all these countries, but some of these, even Vietnam, right? Vietnam is a country under increased monitoring. South Africa, Venezuela. Um, so you just have to be careful. I would say for these countries, similarly to before, engage in more due diligence, more awareness of who you're working for, who you're acting for. But I think, 99% of the time, our clients are probably going to be Canadian citizens, possibly, US citizens, where the risk is not as great. But I would say you still have to be careful. You still have to monitor your business relationship. And then definitely you have to fill out all of the Fintrac required forms. So here, I just listed out the basic forms that we do require. So when you're acting for an individual, whether it's a seller or buyer, there's the individual ID form. Sometimes there may be a corporation involved, especially if you're doing a commercial transaction. There will be often a corporation or even a nonprofit organization. We have to keep the corporation ID record on file. And then when a corporation is involved, there's another form you have to fill out, which is the beneficial ownership record, um, because you have to identify who is the ultimate owner, who is the ultimate buyer or seller of the property, because the corporation is a corporation, it's not a real person. So you have to identify the real individual behind the corporation and fill out that form. And then finally, receipt of funds record is whenever you are dealing with, a deposit, be it bank draft or check, you have to fill this out and provide it to our company. Um, so let me shift to the forms themselves. I just want to show everyone which forms we're talking about. So hopefully you can see all this. Uh, the first form is the individual ID form. This is probably going to be the most common form you're going to fill out, because whether you're helping a seller or a buyer, you have to fill out the form. Um, I'm not going to, go into that much detail for each form because everyone should already know this. And it's fairly self-explanatory if you read it carefully. And these forms are all part of the web form templates that we have, or SkySlope, whichever system you use. So the main idea here is you have to verify the identity of the person. So that means getting their full legal name, their address, their date of birth, and nature of principal business or occupation. This is an important one because you have to know, how is this person employed? What company do they work for? What is their title? A lot of the times I see, you know, I know clients may be retired, right? They call themselves retired, or I think retired is, or they say they're a student. Um, the goal for Fintrac is they want to understand where is the money coming from. So when you put somebody is retired, it doesn't tell you enough about, their source of income, right? So for those people, I would say dig a little deeper, and the best time you can do that is either when you're filling out the offer, or you're signing the BRA, or the second or the third time you're meeting the client, and you're firming up that relationship is a good time to get all these details. So if they're retired, I would say, what did you do previously? Where did you work? Um, and then if they're a student, a student buying a property, obviously they're not working. So you do need to ask them, where is the money coming from? Is it from parents, relatives, or do they have previous investments, right? Um, and then in terms of the government issued photo ID, the most common one will be either the driver's license or a passport. And then you have to record the document number, so the driver license number or the passport number, where it was issued, and the expiry date. Um, you don't have to take a picture of the ID, but you do have to see it physically and record those details. If the client does not have a driver's license or a passport, there are other ways to verify their ID. And importantly, you do need to get some sort of photo ID. I don't know if there's a way you can just rely on written documents with no photo ID. So sometimes there might be a PR card. I know PR card has a photo and a name and a document number. Um, but if they only have, let's say, a birth certificate, birth certificate only has a name and there's no photo. So there's no way for you to know, does this person actually match the info in the ID? So here, if you can't use the government issued photo ID method, there is the credit file method, which means you have to pull the credit report. Probably not going to be very common. I don't know, if people are very willing to provide their credit report. So then there's the dual ID process. Dual ID is what it says. You have to obtain two different independent, reliable sources of ID. And they have to be, federal, provincial, or local government IDs. Um, and then anytime a third party is involved, you have to verify the identity of the third party. So when would that come up? If there's a named buyer on an APS, but really, maybe their parent is helping them or a friend or somebody else. If that person is providing the funds and you know that, then you have to fill out the third party um, client ID record because say you have a BRA signed with John Smith, but really it's John Smith's parents who are kind of providing the funds and acting in the background. That's when the third party section would come into play. Client risk. So uh, this is another important section. You have to assess what's the risk of this client. Are they a Canadian citizen or a PR? Um, do they live within, 10 kilometers of an international border or 5 kilometers of an international airport? You may ask, that's kind of a strange question to ask, but the goal of Fintrac is to determine, is this person frequently traveling globally? Are they transferring funds a lot, right? All of those things may or may not point to increased risk for terrorist financing or money laundering. Do they have any connections to a high risk country? So that list of countries I mentioned earlier, subject to increased monitoring, those would definitely be considered high risk countries. Have they tried to hide their identity in any way? So if you meet a client and the client refuses to meet in person, they only want to meet online, right? That's a potential red flag. Does a transaction involve a third party? Yes or no? Um, did the client provide some or all the deposit in cash? Yes or no? So once you've filled out this questionnaire, yes or no, or possibly, then you're going to score the total scorecard. Um, and then depending on the score, then it will tell you whether the client is considered low, medium, or high risk. And then there are certain other obligations you have depending on the risk of the client. So business relationship, I said earlier that this is a defined term under FinTrack. Uh, what is a business relationship? It just means that whenever you are in the course of a real estate transaction, you're assisting a client, that counts as a business relationship. And then you are subject to all of the record keeping requirements of FinTrack. So maintaining adequate ID record, receipt of funds record if it applies, and maintaining ongoing monitoring of the business relationship. So You have to identify, what is the purpose of this transaction? Is it for residential or commercial property? Um, you have to be able to assess what's the risk of the client. How did you meet them? Anything relevant that may be relevant for Fintrac purposes, you want to record here. So, so how did you meet them? How many times have you interacted with them? Obviously, if it's your friend for many, many years, you know them very well, the risk is going to be low. And I would say it's still better to provide some details in the ID form as opposed to nothing, right? If you put nothing here, um, it either means you forgot to fill it or you don't have any information about the client at all, which is neither of those are good. So I don't think it doesn't matter whether they're your long-term friend or a brand new client. It's always very good to and required to put the details in here of the client, how you know them. Um, and then if the client is high risk, then you have to conduct enhanced measures to monitor the business relationship and to keep the client info up to date. So if you do have a client that's considered high risk or even medium risk, I would say talk to us, talk to the compliance officer, talk to our managers to see what kind of enhanced measures you need to apply. There's different things you can do depending on the circumstance. And then suspicious transactions. So sometimes the transaction may not be, what you think it is, or there may be lots of red flags or gray flags, right? So it may be suspicious and we may have to report it to Fintrac. It's always better to err on the side of caution, um, as opposed to, not dealing with a high risk client. Um, the corporation ID form is similar to the individual one. Obviously, a corporation is not going to have any kind of photo ID, but that's where the beneficial ownership record comes into play. So, in terms of the corporation itself, you need to get the name, the corporate address, the name of the principal business, the name of the directors. The best way is to ask the client to provide the corporation's articles of incorporation. That will tell you when the corporation was formed, a list of the directors that have control and signing authority over the company. And then you have to put here the type of the verification record, so articles of incorporation, and how you verified it, when you verified it. If it's not a corporation, if it's a different entity, so that may be a nonprofit company or some kind of other, or even a trust or a partnership, you have to verify some kind of original documentation that shows that this company is in existence and who are the controlling individuals. And then similarly for corporations, you have to assess the client risk. They may be low, medium, or high. And then you have to identify the business relationship. So I think when you're dealing with a corporation, it's a bit more involved because there's obviously the company itself, which is your client, but then there are the individuals behind the corporation that are giving you instructions, telling you what to do. So that's why the beneficial ownership record comes into play. Yeah, you have to identify, who is the director of the company, especially people who own 25% or more of the shares of the corporation. That means they have, some kind of significant control over the company. There's also trusts, and then there's also other companies, other entities besides corporations and trusts, so, partnership or nonprofit. Record keeping, so you have to provide info about the entity's ownership, control, and structure. So again, I think it's important to ask at the beginning of the relationship, do you have articles of incorporation? What's the ownership structure? If someone is acting like they own the whole company, you do have to ask, right? Are you the only owner, or is there anyone else that may be a director or officer? and always ask for some kind of documentation to verify that information. The next form I'm going to cover is receipt of funds record. So anytime you're receiving money, it could be a check, or it could be a bank draft, it could be, we as a policy, we don't take any cash at all. Um, so typically is when you're receiving a check or a bank draft from your client, for a purchase, let's say, and then you have to provide that check to the listing brokerage, is when you'll have to provide this receipt of funds record. You have to indicate how much funds, the currency, when you received it, what's the purpose. So here, deposit for a purchase, and Part C, account related information. I know this part gives a lot of agents some anxiety or difficulty because some clients, they're not comfortable giving you their account number. But you have to ask, and you should get the information from the client, because if you can explain to them properly that the purpose of this is for Fintrac, and it's very important to discharge our duties under Fintrac. Make them understand that it is a government required information piece of information, and the forms are always kept completely confidential by our brokerage, and only disclosed to Fintrac if there's ever an audit and they need to see it. So number of account, the name of the account holder, and the type of the account, so checking or savings. A lot of the times I see a bank draft, and then the account number is a number on the bank draft, but that's not the account number. That's just the number of the local bank branch that's issuing the bank draft. If you have a check, the check will have the account number on there. And then you have to identify the individual providing the funds. So usually it will be the buyer. Sometimes you see buyer's relative, parents, or friend providing the funds, right? In that case, that person providing the funds is considered a third party, and you have to obtain their ID as well, and record it in the receipt of funds record. So part E here. Um, Where can we see the receipt of funds form is a question in the chat. So all of the Fintrac forms are in web forms. They're in SkySlope. They're also on the agent portal. So we always have the office templates for preparing any kind of offers or listing agreements. So always use our templates first. We have the Fintrac forms. We have the office standard schedule B. We have standard schedule A for leases. Um, so those are all the good resources you can use. I want to show this as well. So this is our Fintrac compliance manual. It's quite a detailed document. It's over 130 pages. You're more than welcome to read it, but I think more importantly, you just have to know what are your basic duties as a real estate agent under Fintrac. What kind of records do you need to keep? What are your obligations to maintain those records and monitor business relationships? And then anytime you do have any questions, always ask our managers. We're here to help. And then I have some bonus content. Hopefully everyone can see this. So I wanted to cover recent MLS updates, because I know Treb MLS have updated the rules, they've updated their systems. It can be a bit confusing for some people. I think the biggest area that have received updates recently is MLS listings and data integrity. So the Treb Data Integrity Service, or DIS, they're responsible for maintaining the accuracy and integrity of the MLS data. So as a brokerage, we receive every now and then we will receive DIS notices for our brokerage listings. And I've included here what are the most common areas of non-compliance. We see this a lot. So number one, public-facing remarks can only contain information related to the listing, and they cannot contain anything that promotes goods or services or contains any kind of solicitation. So I think most commonly you will see people putting in the client remarks, please call listing agent for more information. That's not allowed because if you posted a listing on the MLS, you know that the listing goes to realtor.ca, which is public. It's on, you can search it on Google. So the reason they don't want any um, anything that promotes services or any kind of solicitation is, you can't have that in the client remarks section because then it seems like you're trying to solicit members of the public, which, just doesn't really make sense. So any kinds of those remarks, they have to go to the broker remarks section, because in that section only realtors can see that, and they see that on the MLS system, not in the public. The second area I see a lot is listing photos. So listing photos have to show the property um, as the main focus, and there cannot be any text or branding at all. So I think many years ago, you used to be able to have the virtual tour company name on the photo, not anymore. You cannot have a photo of your for sale sign in the MLS photo because, again, that's a form of solicitation. And I see this a lot too. Like a lot of agents will just copy paste photos from a previous listing of the property and use that as their own. You cannot do that. You always have to obtain your own original photos of the property. And you'll notice when you upload a listing now and you add photos, the TREP system will add the brokerage name as kind of a watermark to the photo. So that then identifies those photos as belonging to the brokerage for that particular MLS listing. Another change is listing status. So anytime you accept an offer, whether it's firm or conditional, the status has to be changed, reported by midnight of the next business day. So basically, you have one business day to update the status. I think another very common area we see DIS notices. And I will mention here like the potential penalties for not complying with DIS notice is pretty severe. I think a lot more severe than you would think. The fine they've indicated is up to $50,000. So, can you imagine not updating the status of a listing or not fixing the public side remarks and possibly getting a fine of $50,000, right? It can be much more than the even the total commission on a listing. Mandatory fields, it's mandatory for a reason. It must be completed. So the most common area is probably realty taxes. If you're dealing with a recently completed new home, then that year's taxes likely have not been assessed. So I think before a lot of people will put zero, but zero is not really accurate because obviously the realty taxes for the year are not zero. They just have not been assessed. So the solution here is if you don't have last year's taxes, then you have to put taxes not yet assessed in the MLS field. If the field requires a number and you cannot put the text, then you have to put in the broker remarks, quote, taxes are not yet assessed. So that way you get around the problem of, not you cannot put information that's inaccurate, because that could be a misrepresentation. So you always want to put details in the broker remarks so that it's clear for other agents to see. And then, oh, another new thing, and some of you may know this kind of a trick, right? It's how to get the above grade square footage for a listing. So above grade square footage is now a mandatory field. Um, any recent listings or new homes, it's easier to get the square footage because you will have the floor plan from the builder or the area might already be on MLS from a previous listing. Um, even if you're helping a buyer look at different properties and you want to know what's the exact square footage of this house, there's actually a pretty interesting way to get that information. I think before we've told agents, oh, order the MPAC area report for $5. Well, in today's economy, a dollar is a dollar. A dollar is very important. So we're always trying to help you save money. So I'm gonna share my other window here and show you a trick to find the above grade area. Okay, so when you're in Treb MLS, I use Realm. I think there's a similar way for Matrix. So I'm just going to show Realm today. So let's say you're in Realm and you want to either confirm the above grade square footage area or you got a new listing and this is an older listing, right? There's no square footage indicated. So like I said before we would say go to MPAC, order the area report for $5. Now there's a new way to do this. So you just copy the MLS number and you go to add edit and you're going to pretend like you're going to add this listing. So you can clone the listing. You can also add a listing and put the address. So
Uh,
let me try this one. I
why don't
put
you
the
why don't you
address.
show your computer screen? Yeah.
Can you see that?
No,
No?
we see your face.
Oh, I thought I'm showing my screen.
Yeah, show your screen. Show the one thing I want to add is it is better never clone any listing, even it is yourself. Always upload a new listing. When you upload a new listing here, and the system will pull the data directly from property line. I think Sammy is also on the line, right? Sammy, what do you think that my suggestion here?
Yes. So either way it's work. You can clone the
But
listing, but also you can add a new listing. But
yeah,
add a new listing is the best and the safe way because you need to double check, making sure all the information is accurate. Otherwise, you may rely on last listing wrong information.
yeah, that's why I suggest not a clone listing. And also, when you prepare offer package, say, let's say I want to buy a new house, I mean, I want to buy a house, I buy a condo, whatever, do not clone previous listing package or offer package. Always prepare a new one. I think Scott can also show that is do not clone. Forget the word of clone because when you clone, you're gonna copy previous mistake. So like here, if Scott is gonna post the new address here, the system will pull the correct data. Go ahead.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
it's work.
So yeah, I think when you clone a listing, it's easy to clone the previous mistakes, if there's any. So it's better to add the listing. Even if you want to practice, you just put your information here. I think Cliffwood is a road. I'm gonna put a road. It's already there. And then we click create. And then you see here, it shows you the lot size based on MPAC and the lot size area. But what we are trying to find is the above grade square footage of the property. So you go to exterior and you see here, the number is there for you. 2,786 square feet above grade area as per MPAC. So there's no more need to go to MPAC and order a separate $5 report to get the area because you can do this in less than a minute and get the exact number of the area of the house. So I think it's a very useful tool when you are uploading a new listing or you're helping a buyer, compare different properties, and you want to compare the different sizes of the properties. It's a very, I think, is a new and pretty good way to find the information. Saifu asked in the chat, some listings on MLS don't have room measurements. Are these fields mandatory? Yes, they are definitely mandatory now. So, yeah, so in here, I think sometimes it depends on the what kind of listing you're uploading, but often it will just say, the interior room measurements are mandatory. Um, And as a matter of fact, I think for an agent, you do have to verify the size of the rooms, right? How many rooms are there? How many bedrooms? How many washrooms? What is the size of the living spaces? And the easiest way is to buy one of those laser pointer measures. I think you can get them for $40, $50, and you just measure wall to wall. It'll give you the measurement or meters or feet, and then you just put that into the listing. I think the mistake you can make is to not measure at all, or you rely on a previous listing which may have incorrect measurements, and then you put the listing on MLS, and the DIS notice may come very soon, or you may have a buyer client complaining, how come the room measurement is wrong? It's not actually this big, right? So those are all ways to avoid those kinds of situations. The best way is to always verify the information on your listing. Oh, and that reminds me, another thing you cannot put anymore in broker remarks is agents to verify all measurements, because that sentence by itself is not correct to say. If you put on your listing agent to verify measurements, then you're basically saying that the measurements on your listing may not be accurate. So how can you put that in the listing? Um, so again, that just shows you the importance of measuring yourself and putting the correct measurements in the listing. Uh, we have another question in the chat. Can we get the data from land registry via Realm? As far as I know, the information in Realm, some of the information does come from land registry. So the PIN number, I think the roll number as well, and the legal description of the property, those all come from land registry, from Geo Warehouse. So um, if you're trying to verify, let's say, the legal ownership or the legal description, you can easily go to Geo Warehouse, type in the property address or the owner name, and you can find that information. Uh, Sammy's still here. Sammy, do you have anything to add for Fintrac or MLS or Tony?
Yes, just a few things I wanted to mention. The first one, we have lots of the agent, the commission is ready, and they complain why office not give me the commission. So the reason is you still have a missing document. Lots of the agent have a missing document, Fintrac ID, and also the receive funds. So after closing, if you ask your client to say, can I get your photo ID? Because my office needs your ID. So the client usually they will refuse. They said it's already closed. Why I give you the ID? So that's why first thing, when you prepare the offer, you're the buyer agent, you're the listing agent, get a photo ID right away. Don't wait for the after closing. Otherwise, you cannot get your commission. And second thing, I think most of the people, it's the same. They even have a Fintrac ID or receive funds, but they have a missing the occupation. Lots of people say, oh, I asked my client, he's a manager, he's a general labor engineer, but they don't write down the company name. So you have to write down which company they are working with. And also the Fintrac receive funds, you have to check with your client which bank they purchase their bank draft. Most of people say, oh no, my client refused to provide. So try your best when they prepare the deposit. If you ask, I think 99% the buyer will provide. But after closing, if you ask, I think 99% they will refuse to provide. So that's why provide the ID, photo ID, get all the form done when you prepare the offer. And what else? I think that's it. But most of the people recently, I found a lot of the agent doing the listing. And the listing is, we get a lot of complaint regarding the remark for the client. And I know lots of people like to use ChatGPT. And if you're using ChatGPT to write down a broker remark, please use the commander, like tell ChatGPT, prepare my listing to the Toronto MLS broker remark, like a four bedroom, located maybe Young and Finch, and just write down the general feature. The ChatGPT will help you to generate, but make sure that is for client remark. If you write down the client remark, the ChatGPT won't give you the contact me for more information. This is totally not allowed. If you prepare the listing, don't write down contact me for the more information. So the travel will give you the DIS. If you don't correct, you get a penalty. And yeah, I think that's all from my side. If you have any question, feel free to ask a question. We have almost 39 people online, and also we have one person in office.
Yeah, thank you for the training today, Scott and Sammy. At the end of the event, I want to mention one thing. Just like minutes ago, I noticed that on my web that Rico have set up the this year's Rico insurance premium. So I post in the group now in the meeting notes that you can go to online to pay Rico insurance, which is my web.rico.own.ca, $500, and you have up to the first 2 week. I think. Let me check my calendar. What is the second
Usually
week
middle
of
of the August.
Tuesday? I think maybe either August 8th or either August 15th. I didn't check the detail yet. That is the deadline to payment. If you forgot to pay, then your license will be suspended on September 1st. As a book record, as a brokerage, we have to terminate your trap. Once again, if you forgot to pay by the deadline, and then you still have to pay, you can still pay it after the deadline, which is August 15th. Say from August 15th to August 31st, you can still pay it, and then they pay with the added administration fee. So $500. I think Rico charges $35 for handling fee. So before August 15th, you pay $500. No HT, no tax, no other fee. That's a 500. 500 is the fee. After August 15, you pay 535. You can pay up to August 31st. September 1, Rico will send a notice to me, to you, and to Trap that your license is being suspended. When your license being suspended, then as a broker record and a brokerage, we have to terminate your travel membership, your MAB, Misaga Real Estate Board. So you cannot practice. You say, oh, I already paid the travel fee. I already paid the board fee. I have the insurance. You cannot use that service anymore because your license being suspended. So just like your driver license being suspended, you should not drive on the road. So tribe have a strong rules from January this year that as soon as your license being terminated or being suspended as a broke record, if I do not terminate your travel license, travel membership fee, they charge the broke record, which is in this office is Tony Ma, 5,000 per member not being terminated on time. We got 35,000, 35000，中文说就是35000块 ，35,000 penalty to Homelife Landmark Realty Brokerage. The broke record, his name is Tony Ma. I got the 35,000 penalty in February. I don't know, here we need a clap, we need silence, we need pay a sincere sympathy to Tony Ma, but do not escape the payment. You want to practice real estate, you need to keep your RECO license. You need access to MLS, you need to keep your travel membership. So people always ask me, when the fees will pay, what do I pay? Basically, right now is very simple. After 2023, they line up the fee in 2 times. One is before December 31st every year, you pay next year's travel member or Misago membership fee. Travel is $1,997 something. Is $3 less of 2,000, and that's it. That covers Aurea, Korea, and the travel. And every year from middle of July to August, middle of August, you have 1 month to pay the $500. Okay. Thank you all for joining training today. If no other item, and then yeah, we have, at least we have 1 person to pay the fee. I sign up and pay my fee in January. Do I need to pay any fee? Yes. If you sign up to pay in January, then you only paid the fee up to August 31st. Now, today is the time you pay for next term. The RECO's insurance term is every year from September 1st, covered to next year of August 31st. So September 1 to August 31. So today, every agent, you have to pay. No matter what, you got a license last month, 2 months ago, or January or last year, everyone has to pay this $500 RECO E&O and deposit insurance fee. Okay, thank you. I think that's all for me, and hope everyone enjoy your lunch, enjoys the rest day of this week. And next week, we're going to have a training for a new agent. We talk about the market condition, and then we're going to do a training in person and in Zoom next Thursday. Thank you. All the best.